His anointing is empowering. The kingdom of the Lord is within me, and He's calling me.
We're coming into our women's conference. What a perfect place, a perfect setting for our women's conference in October, because we're at odds. We're at war against domestic violence. So it's a perfect place for our conference to sit. It's right after the Atonement, Day of Atonement. It's perfect because it fits around the Feast of Tabernacle, the Jewish celebration. All of our conferences fit around the Jewish holidays because I'm a firm believer that we can't get past God's calendar. I love His calendar. But I believe that women, being the core of the home, experience so many things. Nothing against men, but women experience so many things that they don't necessarily have a platform for. And we can really minister to one another and heal one another and give men some understanding as the type of things that we had to go through, not to mention childbirth. That can sit all by itself. I had 4 children using the Lamaze method, which meant I didn't take anything for pain. Ask me now, would I do that? The answer is no. But I was young and courageous and decided I didn't want to medicate any of my kids, so I nursed them, and I don't regret it. Just at 59, I may have done things a little differently, knowing all the pain that you go through. I was able to bear pain without breaking, but I came real close. I was on the edge. But I realized later on that life offers so much pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain, that is nothing to be compared to the physical pain, because at least with the physical pain, you could take a pain pill, they could give you a shot, you could have an epidural, but when life does something to you emotionally, how do you medicate that? When there's spiritual pain, how do you medicate that? The greatest battles, or the hardest battles we've ever had to fight, when the battle was in the mind. You couldn't punch yourself in the brain. So you were constantly going to sleep, and in your dreams, emotional healing woke up and your emotions spoke to you. In your dreams, your spirit man had to fight. You had all these thoughts that were warring against you, from generational curses to the damage that may have occurred while you were yet in your mother's womb. All of these things that you walk through, and you can't self-medicate. You just have to survive it and become a warrior. You have to decide that your outcome is you won't fail, you won't break, you won't give in, that you're going to be a conqueror. So we're having 2 conquerors here tonight, and I know that you're going to love this. I was excited about this all week long. Martha Harvest. Right. Tell them a little bit about yourself. And Melanie McDonald. Tell them about your beautiful self, your journey, how many years you've been in Bay County, and just fill in the gap.
I came to Panama City when I was 20. I'm a mother of 2 girls, a 38-year-old and a 36-year-old. I got married when I was about 25 to, I thought, was the love of my life. I want to back up a little bit. Growing up, I noticed that my mom, all her life, dealt with abuse from my father. Physically, mentally, literally kicking. I mean, I was raised up seeing that. And in my mind, I was thinking, I'll never deal with that. So after I got married, I realized from reading the Word and being in church and studying that I actually caused a bitterroot judgment upon my marriage, upon myself. And in my marriage, I dealt with some of the same things that my mother dealt with. And
some of the very things that you vowed as a child that you would never deal with.
I was
watching your father abuse your mother, and probably carefully selecting a mate so that you wouldn't endure that. So how long were you married before this surfaced?
Well, we dated for 5, but it was happening before I married him.
So you were dealing with violence even dating. And a lot of young people have dealt with that dating and think it's okay because their friends just simply tell them that's a part of it. He's a good man. You know, all of the lines that make them feel they should accept this. Why did you marry him?
But I married him anyway because I loved him. And, I thought, every time he would beat me, he would tell me, oh, I'm not going to do it again. And then he wanted to make love to me, and, that was supposed to make everything okay, and it did not. So I married him anyway, and, I dealt with it another 8 or 9 years, and then he felt like he had to bring other women into our bed, and
So when you say bring other women into your bed,
I found out he was seeing other women.
okay, so he was having affairs. And did he announce that to you, or your investigative skills helped you figure that
I
out?
actually picked up the phone one night, and I heard him telling another lady that he loved him. And then he wanted me to go with him to the hospital where this lady was in the hospital. And
I beg your pardon? Okay, you answered the phone. Let's make sure we're clear on this.
I answered my
You
phone at
answered the
home.
phone.
I went to pick up the phone to make a call.
You overheard him telling another woman that he loves her.
Yes.
And after you heard this, he wanted you to go to the hospital with him to visit the woman
Yes.
that he said he was in love with.
Yes.
And you're the wife.
Yes.
Well, was
Yes.
he aware that you overheard the conversation?
Not at this point.
Okay.
I went to the hospital with him. I went up to the room with him, and he said he had to go out for a few minutes. And I confronted the lady, and she couldn't really talk at that time because she had had neck surgery. So I told her she needed to tell me what was going on. If she didn't, that I was going to throw her out that window, and we was on the 3rd floor. So she just went into a rage, and the doctor came in, and the doctor actually made a statement like, well, what have you been doing, sleeping with somebody else's wife? Now, I don't know why this doctor said that, but this doctor said that. But she said, she said, yes, she had been sleeping with my husband, and, at that point, I was so upset, but I was able to get help from my pastors. I went through counseling. I was devastated. I was humiliated. I felt less than a woman. But yet and still, I stayed with my husband, wanted to work my marriage out. But after a year, he came back and told me he still wanted to be with this person. And at this time, within that year, I found out about other ladies that he had been sleeping with. It took me about 25 years, even though I was saved, coming to church, raising my children, working every day, dealing with everyday things. It took me about 25 years to get myself delivered. God working with me and the church working with me. I came to church. I praised God. I was actually walking around like a dead woman, though, because it was hard to function, but I did it. I got some help, but that was just, it was still not enough for me. It was just a constant reminder of what my husband did. And get this, I got married twice doing this 20 years to other men, but to be honest, I was still in love with my first husband. And why would I want to do that to those other men? But I was messed up. I was wounded. I was hurt. I was humiliated. I was coming to church nearly every Sunday or every time the doors open, but I was so wounded and so hurt. And I know that there's other women out there that have gone through the very same thing that I have. And I know that you can overcome that. I pray that it doesn't take you 25 years like it did me, but I thank God that during those 25 years, He kept me. He didn't let the enemy take me out. And I thank God for delivering me.
Join Dr. Vernette Rosier and the network of Covenant Churches and Ministries for the 2014 Healing the Whole Woman Spirit, Body, and Soul Conference, October 9th through 11th in Panama City, Florida. This 2-day and 2-night event is designed to encompass women that have been rejected, abandoned, or physically, spiritually, and emotionally abused. Dr. Vernette Rosier and her guests will discern the origin of their pain and assist them in their journey to wholeness, spirit, body, and soul. This year's conference theme is Women Who Are Warriors. Registration is free. Join us for the 2014 Healing the Whole Woman, Spirit, Body, and Soul Conference, October 9th through 11th in Panama City, Florida. For additional information, call Healing the Whole Person Ministries at 850-769-5442 or email us at healingthewholeperson@comcast.net.
I want to be all that you want me to be. I just want someone to take the time with me. And because you've been willing to reach out to others and have been overlooked by other people that you just gave and you served, and even when they mistreated you, you went home, you cried, but you said, God, but I feel like it's in my heart to do, and I don't feel right if I don't do. It's the ministry of helps that looks like a bunch of hands reach out of you like an octopus that just brings great joy in helping other individuals. And that is a gift that was given to you by God, and you're not happy when you don't get to use your gift. And I see that the hand of the Lord with oil, pouring oil in those wounds, in those wounded areas where it seems like the infection tried to set in and pussy. If he's pouring oil in there and cleaning out the wounds so that he can heal you and put you back in the helping position. You have just helped some people that weren't grateful for the help, and the message fed you so today because you felt, that's where I live. That's my heart of hearts. Everybody doesn't belong behind the pulpit, on the platform. Your gift may be singing, ushering, but you're strong ministries of helps. Excellent armor bearer. Armor bearers are simply servants ministering to individuals with the gifting that they have. And because you've longed to do that, and you wonder, what's wrong with me? The Lord said, nothing's wrong with you. And your gift of intercession, you have interceded and interceded and interceded. Don't you dare stop, because God is with it. Sometimes it's just a matter of changing stations and changing places. You don't stop doing what you're doing. You just realize my season is up there. Did your children watch any of, as the domestic violence was occurring, the physical abuse? Were they privy to that as well?
Yes.
So the children were privy to the betrayal. They were privy to the physical abuse. How did that affect your children?
Well, let me just give you an example of one night. He came in late at night. He woke all of us up. He beat me. I was bleeding. And my daughter came in with a butcher knife and said, if you hit my mom again, I'll kill you. At that point, I turned around, I took my kids in my night clothes, and I walked to my mother's house, and I never went back to him again. I mean, that alone, I didn't want my children. I don't know, but at that point, I knew that I had to save my children. At that moment, I saw that my children's life was at stake. I walked away and I never went back again, and I divorced him. But the thing that I think that took me so long to get over that is those two women went to church with me. Those two women was in church praising God and serving God with me every day. And I think, every time the church door opened. And I think that is what took me so. And it was just so hard for me to deal with that because it was in church. So I think that's what took me so long to get over it.
So that's like King David saying, had it been an enemy, I could have borne it. But it was the one that took sweet counsel with me, the one that went to the house of God. This was like a sorority or a sisterhood that we take a vow to do no harm, the Hippocratic Oath. So it's a nonverbal vow that because we're in the same ministry or in the same church, we will not betray you by committing adultery with your spouse. So you felt betrayed twice by members, friends, and your spouse. And you said something earlier, you said your children knew. How did you know? How did your children know?
They told me afterwards.
Okay. They said, Mom, we knew.
Well, they knew because sometimes these people, them and their children, would ride home with my husband and the children. So they said they knew from different gestures, things that were said, and this kind of thing,
So
They
people
knew.
assume that children don't observe, but the children had observed.
They knew.
And kids know. They knew. So was that even more devastating for you, knowing that your children were aware of this before you were?
Well, it was years later that my children told me that.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe things would have been different if they would have told me during that time.
Okay.
Because, it's different when someone messes with your children.
Sure.
So I'm glad they didn't tell me then.
So did your children have to endure any abuse in the marriage themselves?
Yes. Actually, I probably should have left. No, I should have left my husband before then, because one night I caught my husband coming out of my daughter's bedroom, and my daughter screaming, and she said he touched her. And I stayed with him even after that. I shouldn't have done that, because I feel like that done the wrong thing in my daughter. And just recently, she and I was talking about that, but she said, Mama, I understood you was going through so much yourself. But from that point on, my children slept with their doors locked. But I should have left in. And that was shortly after that is when I found out about he was sleeping with someone else. So a year after that, we separated, and that was that. But yes, my daughters, now he would not hit my daughters, but they would see him hit me.
Okay.
They would see, it was not a week that he didn't beat me.
Join Dr. Vernette Rosier and the network of Covenant Churches and Ministries for the 2014 Healing the Whole Woman Spirit, Body, and Soul Conference, October 9th through 11th in Panama City, Florida. This 2-day and 2-night event is designed to encompass women that have been rejected, abandoned, or physically, spiritually, and emotionally abused. Dr. Vernette Rosier and her guests will discern the origin of their pain and assist them in their journey to wholeness, spirit, body, and soul. This year's conference theme is Women Who Are Warriors. Registration is free. Join us for the 2014 Healing the Whole Woman Spirit, Body, and Soul Conference, October 9th through 11th. In Panama City, Florida. For additional information, call Healing the Whole Person Ministries at 850-769-5442 or email us at healingthewholeperson@comcast.net.
You've seen a lot of changes. You've seen a lot of ins and outs. You've seen a lot of ups and downs. You've learned to watch, and you've learned to put time on it. There's people that have been in a hurry to race to do this and race to do that. I see this watcher, like this person just very, like a Clydesdale, they're very methodic in their movement. They can carry heavy loads. They're not a racehorse. They're going to move along at their own pace, but they can pull it. You've had heavy loads that you carried through your lifetime. And most people would have broke under the pressure, what you had, the weight of it, or what they had to carry. You just bared down and pulled because you understood it's got to be done, and I'm the person to get it done. And you're willing to get under the load and help other people carry their load. You're not a lone ranger. You're a team player. Like if they're doing it, you don't stand around and watch other people work. You'll get right in there, and they're no small task for you. You'll get right in there. I don't care if it's in the limelight or if it's scrubbing the floor, whatever it is, you'll help the homeless because you believe in everybody needs a hand up. And you will reach to give them a hands up. And that's just the way the Lord made you. And it's beneficial to the world. There are people in the world that are longing to meet people like you that have been walked past by everybody else. But you'll pay attention to the people that other people walk past. Because some of those people, you're not looking to see what you can get out of them. You realize they need to know that somebody still cares and not giving up on them, because you know what it is to have somebody give up on you. And because God gave you a hand up, you made an internal vow, I'm going to give them a hand up also.
And I felt too embarrassed to come to the pastors. And then on the other hand, I kept thinking, well, I'm a wife and I'm saved, I got to cover my husband. And I was looking at that wrong. Because nowadays, that would not happen, But I was thinking wrong. I hadn't been saved that long. I thought that I was doing the right things.
But a lot of denominational churches, this is sad to say, but a truth. Growing up in Havana, Gaston County, going to college there in Tallahassee, a lot of the churches actually would teach, the pastors would teach, stay with your husband, that if you, and especially, this is not to attack any denomination, just my experiences in growing up, I would hear them talk about if the woman fasted enough, if she prayed enough, if you did this, maybe you did something. Never being an advocate for the woman, but it was more of a male-dominated society of if you prayed right, if you cooked his food, if you took good care of his kids, or I would see as a teenager and hear other kids talk about the infidelity and actually hear them say, oh, a man will be a man. So they basically were programming women to accept this, that it's par for the course, and if you're a good wife, you just forgive him and you give him another chance and you keep tolerating the physical abuse, the verbal abuse, the constant infidelity. And those are the kind of things that a lot of the churches taught. It is not biblically correct, it's not to their credit, but it was things that I'd heard and watched women go through, and I always admired pastors and preachers. I thought they were the closest thing to God, so I never really understood why they would advocate this unsanctified, ungodly lack of character, behavior that did not exemplify Jesus Christ. Because Jesus was an advocate for women. The woman at the well, he said, you've had 5 or 6 husbands, the one you have is not your own, go and sin no more. The woman that was caught in the act of adultery, he said to the men, he without fault cast the first stone, where they were trying to stone her. The woman with the alabaster box that took her whole year being a prostitute to make that money, and here she's using it to anoint Jesus. Throughout the scripture, you see where Jesus stood up for women, empowered women, protected women on the cross, with his mother telling John, behold your mom, and telling his mom, behold your son. So he looked out. He was a great son. He was a great man. So it does not match denominationalism. It does not match some of the things that we watched and heard the church world endorse, and really just kind of put the burden on women that you have to handle this. So how did that affect your self-esteem, your self-worth?
I actually felt like I was on the floor most of the time. I actually felt like God didn't love me, and for the longest, I sort of blamed God. That's upset at him, but I was upset at God because I felt like, why did you let this happen? And everybody know that my husband slept with this person, and why did you let this happen to me? I just felt, to be honest, I felt dirty. I felt like everybody knew, it was as if the spotlight was on Martha. It felt really bad. Mm-hmm. I had no self-esteem, actually.
So how did you regain your self-esteem, your self-worth? You're a beautiful woman.
I started working on Martha.
Okay.
I would do things that I wanted to do, things that made me feel good. I wanted to be around people that made me feel good. I actually went and got some help. I went to therapy, and I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want people to think I was crazy, but I needed to talk to someone that didn't know me,
and that's
didn't
kind
know
of the
situation.
stigma around
Yes.
psychiatry, psychologist, therapy. You have to be crazy, which is not correct. It keeps you from going crazy. Amen. Postal, harming yourself or harming someone else, and it's really an ignorant train of thought to feel that you got to be crazy. I think brilliant people and those that aren't impoverished actually embrace therapy. Poverty and ignorance helps you decide that you can just make it without that. I believe in pastoral care, but I also believe in licensed therapy. I believe in the educational side of it, psychology of the mind, anything and everything. Just like we embrace physical physicians, gynecologists, neurologists, I think the same way we should embrace therapists, psychiatrists, psychology, anything that will help you to be a better person. So all of that helped you?
My pastors helped me.
Along
I couldn't
with
have
all
made
of
it.
that.
I could not have made it without you and Pastor Dave. And the church family. I had people that surround me and helped me, and I don't think I could have made it without them.
That is so awesome. I love the way you reached over and touched Melanie, which is wonderful. So it's a friend, sisterhood. Isn't it ironic that you were betrayed by friends and healed by friends? Betrayed in church and healed in church. Isn't it just like God? The snake that bit you is the same one that he'll put her on the pole, and you look up and live, and you're healed. And friendships are such a powerful need in our life, a force in our life. How were you able to have friends again after that? How were you able to trust again? Because one of these individuals was a friend of yours.
Yeah, but I had a hard time with that too.
Okay.
Melanie. She went through a lot being my friend, and I know that. But I mean, it's hard to trust. I really don't have a whole lot of friends now because I watched some of my mother's friends do the same thing to her. Some of my mother friends went with my father, and I knew that. And then again, I turn around and that happens to me also. But I've learned to trust and have friends again. I mean, it's been a process.
Yeah.
Life is a process, so.
You remind me of this song, Andre Crouch. Through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. Right. I've learned to trust in God. I've learned how to depend upon His Word. So through everything that you've gone through, you've just learned to trust God, that every friend will not do you in. Every friend will not devastate you. I'm sure some of you heard my testimony, bearing pain without breaking, that the first betrayal or infidelity I went through my husband with my best friend. She's deceased now, but you would never think, I never thought, you would never imagine. Though you hear it's always someone close, you just never ever imagine. But it's wonderful when you're powerful enough that you do not let your past destroy your future. Because of what transpired does not mean you should write everyone off, because it does not negate the need for good friends.